All rise.
Good evening, everyone. I'll call the City Council to order at 8 p.m. on Monday, September 18th, 2023. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
Of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We have 16 items on this evening's agenda, and I will ask the clerk to please read agenda item number 1.
Minutes of the City Council meeting, September 11th, 2023.
Councilor Dumas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to accept and place on file the amended minutes.
Motion made and seconded to accept and place on file the amended minutes. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The minutes are filed, 11-0. Agenda item number 2.
Now is the time for the continued public hearing on the petition from Massachusetts Electric and Verizon New England to install a new joint-owned pole, 3-5, on High Street, approximately 300 feet east of the center line of the intersection of High Street and Bolton Street, and to install a new manhole and underground conduit from pole 3-5 to new manhole, and to existing transformer 1-2 on Exchange Street, order number 23-100, 8950A.
Okay, this public hearing will be taken up in 4 stages. First, the public speaking in favor, starting with the applicant. Second, questions from the public. Third, public speaking in opposition. And then finally, questions from the City Council. So we'll start with public speaking in favor. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Albert Galvin, Design Engineer, National Grid Electric. So there's a new apartment complex going in on Exchange Street. And the overhead lines that are currently out there were going to be too close to the building. So this whole job is to reroute everything underground. We're gonna have the civil crews come in, take out all the overhead, run underground duct, and feed the transformer for that current location there.
All right.
And that involved having to put this intermediate pole in.
All right, thanks, Al. Any other questions or any other members of the public speaking in favor? Any other members of the public speaking in favor? Any other members of the public speaking in favor? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Any questions from the public? Questions from the public?
Good evening. My name is Steve Peck. I live in Marlborough on Victoria Lane. The note here says that this pole will be approximately 300 feet east of the center line of Bolton Street. On looking on Google Maps, it appears there's already a pole at about 270 feet from the center line.
Right, that's probably, I'm assuming, pole 3. Pole 3 and this new pole, 3-5, are relatively close. That was in order to get a straight shot with the underground primary lines up the side of the street there, Exchange Street, to bring it into that business. So it just so happens.
But isn't that on the wrong side of Exchange Street? The pole on Exchange Street is on the other side?
On High Street?
On High Street? The pole is...
They are on the opposite side, so we are cutting across High Street.
But then on Exchange Street, the poles are on the opposite side from where you're going to be.
Right, so anything, all the overhead lines on that pole line there are coming out, and it's all going to be underground. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Thank you, Steve. Any other questions from the public? Any other questions from the public? Any other questions from the public? Hearing none, I close that part of the public hearing. Public speaking in opposition. Any members of the public speaking in opposition? Members of the public speaking in opposition? Any members of the public speaking in opposition? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Questions from the city councilors? Questions from the councilors? Councilor Landers.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a comment that's already in Public Service Committee, and we'll schedule a meeting as soon as possible and get right on it.
Thank you, Councilor Landers. Councilor Dumas.
Thank you. Is there an expected timeline once this is approved?
Once they're on site doing the work?
Correct.
It's probably a 2 to 3 day job once they get everything out there and set up.
Are you ready to go once this is approved?
I'm sorry, say again?
Once this is approved, are you ready to go?
I don't know the scheduling of the crews themselves.
Okay.
It's generally not that quick a turnaround.
Okay.
I would say within 2 to 3 month period, they tend to schedule it out for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Dumas. Any other comments from the councilors? Comments from the councilors? Any comments from the councilors? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing, the entire public hearing, and this is in public service. Thank you, Al. Agenda item number 3.
Now is the time for the public hearing on the application for a special permit from Attorney Brian Falk on behalf of Post Road Realty LLC to construct a mixed-use multifamily residential and commercial project in the Executive Residential Overlay District, which will consist of 475 residential units at the corner of Cimarano Drive and Cedar Hill Street. Order number 23-100, 8952.
Again, this public hearing will be taken up in the same 4 stages: public speaking in favor, questions from the public speaking in opposition, and then finally questions from the city council. We'll start with the public speaking in favor, starting with the applicant. And again, please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, President Austin. Councilors Brian Falk, an attorney at Myrick O'Connell, 100 Front Street in Worcester, here on behalf of the applicant Post Road Realty LLC. We plan to have our principal from Post Road, Andy Montelli, with us tonight. Fortunately, Andy tested positive for COVID over the weekend and is disappointed that he can't be here. But hopefully we'll have Andy back with us in time for our future meetings. In Andy's place, we have John McFadden from Post Road. We also have folks from our design team here to answer any technical questions that you may have. We're excited to be here with plans for phases 3 and 4 of the Green District community. We were before the council in the spring and summer seeking a zoning amendment for these phases. We're now seeking a special permit for the project, which is a mixed-use multifamily and commercial project. Steve, I have the clicker? Are you going to do it? Yeah, I can. Excellent. So this is the neighborhood of the development site. It's almost entirely commercial properties, the 495 interchange, and our existing multifamily neighbor at Stonegate. Most of you are familiar with Phase 1 of the Green District, which is known as the Borough. Phase 2 is under development to be known as the Lodge. Next, please, Steve. So this is the front of the borough, which is close to full occupancy, 235 units, primarily 1 and 2 bedroom. This has been a great addition to the community and has really set the standard for multifamily projects in Marlborough. Next, please. Another shot of the borough. This is our interior residential amenity space. One more, Steve. And this is our patio at the borough. We hosted the Mayor's Gala here in the springtime. It's been a great amenity space for our residents. And this is our existing nature trail around the site's wetlands area. This has been very popular with our residents and a unique feature of this community. This is an overview of the existing project site. You've got Phase 1 along Cimarano Drive, Phase 2 under development towards the back. We started construction and handled it during COVID and had virtually no issues from our neighbors. We expect Phases 1 and 2 together will be a top 10 Marlborough taxpayer once Phase 2 is done, with more than $1.5 million in annual revenue to the city and minimal use of city services. Next, please, Steve. And this is what we would do if we double the positive fiscal impact of the Green District. This shows Phases 3 and 4, Phase 3 towards the back and Phase 4 towards the front, with 2 buildings, Phase 4, 4A and 4B. Phase 4 would have a commercial space in Building 4B. Would be either a restaurant, cafe, coffee shop, something along those lines, 4,800 square feet of commercial space as part of our mixed-use project. Each of these phases would have slightly more than the minimum amount of parking that's required for the uses. Phase 4 will make use of parking decks to minimize our impervious areas. Phase 4 also has a residential parking area under Building 4B. And you can see on this plan in orange is our trail network, existing trail network between Phases 1 and 2, which would extend into Phases 3 and 4. Next, please, Steve. This is a rendering of all 4 phases once complete. Phases 1, 2, 3, and 4. Next. This is gives you a sense of what our parking decks would look like. Again, these are not garages that would block the view of the building. They're decks, 1 level above, 1 below, again, to maximize efficient use of the space and to maximize pervious areas, preserving green space. This is a rendering of Phase 4, the 2 buildings along Cimarano. So the building in the front would house our commercial retail space. That would have 48 parking spaces that would be available to the public. So this is not just for our residents, it's for the entire community to use. And this is an image of Phase 3 from our internal roadway, about 240 units in this phase. Going to turn now to John McFadden to talk a little bit about Post Road's vision for the project.
Thank you, Brian. Again, my name is John McFadden. Our office is at 11 Uncle Road in Fairfield, Connecticut. And I'm joined here tonight by my partner, Katie Clark, our architect, Steve Shetler, and our two engineers, John Shipe and Joe Pesnola, if we have any questions after our presentation is complete. We first came across this project, this parcel of land in 2017, believe it or not. We came before the council in 2018 and 2019 and worked kind of hand in hand to get approved what we now know today is the Green District. The Green District has been a 5-year process, essentially, of working with the city to create what we think is the greatest apartment project outside of downtown Boston. The project, as Brian hinted, is stabilized at this point. It's 90% leased. It's just about 85% occupied. I think if you switch to the last slide, please. One of the things we love to highlight about our project is how much our residents love living there. We think about apartment development, apartment design, amenity design nonstop. This is going to be a very unique development for us because having multiple phases in the same area, we're going to continue to evolve our design and approach to apartment development over the next 2 phases as well. The lodge, as you know it as phase 2, is under construction, capitalized, should open up next summer. Fingers crossed on getting electrical equipment in time. And we're looking forward to introducing that to the community, which that project builds on the success of phase 1 with larger units, more work from home space, and an amenity package, basically an improvement on the existing amenity package at the borough. 4.9 stars for a apartment development is unheard of. I think my favorite restaurant is like a 3.7. That might say something more about me than the restaurant, but you know, these are people who the majority of are not from Marlborough, but now are Marlborough residents. We have people who are obviously moving in town from other projects or downsizing from homes that now come to this place because of, you know, this council, this town has done a great job creating destination retail like the Apex Center, and then obviously furthering jobs. We saw the announcement obviously with Moderna a few months ago. It are very, you know, this council and the town have done a good job kind of keeping employment here and doing a very good job of creating the demand that we hope to supply with homes in the future phases. Brian covered a lot of what I was going to talk about. I think in the transition of, I know Andy's not here, I've got big shoes to fill. He took a lot of the wind out of my sails today, but we're here for any questions you guys have, and we look forward to hopefully continuing to work with the city once this is moving forward. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John. I just have a couple more notes, further take the wind out of your sails, John. After our zoning amendment in June, we met informally with the site plan committee to discuss initial plans for phases 3 and 4. Steve, actually, could you back up to slide 9? Overall plan. That's it. Yep, thanks. So we made some changes to the plans before they even got to you based on feedback from the site plan committee. For one, we added additional green space and buffering along phase 3 to further screen the project from the Stonegate community next door. We've had great relations with Stonegate, but we wanted to make sure that those residents had green space between our parking area and their building. That was based on work with the site plan committee. Second, we added additional trees along our internal road, Green District Boulevard. This will help beautify the project, will also help with our overall resiliency. And third, we have now a connection to the nearby trail system. We're going to be adding a crosswalk over Cimarano, right at the corner with Cedar Hill Street. That'll connect to the new sidewalk that's being built on Cedar Hill Street, and that will connect to the borough's loop trail system. That's something that the site plan committee encouraged us to do, and we thought it was a great idea. That crosswalk will also be right near our commercial phase of our project, so we'll further help integrate the Green District with the Marlborough community. As John mentioned, we first started working with the city on this project back in 2018. Our team has developed great relationships in City Hall, and we're proud to be members of the Marlborough business community. I think you've seen that Post Road over-delivers and builds projects that everyone can be proud of. I'm happy to address your questions tonight, and we look forward to working with you on the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Falk. Are there any other members of the public speaking in favor? Any members of the public speaking in favor? Any members of the public speaking in favor? Hearing none, I'll close that portion of the public hearing. Questions from the public? Any questions from the public?
Good evening. My name is Steve Peck. I live on Victoria Lane in Marlborough. I may have missed some of the previous discussions, so these questions might be repeats, and I hope you'll have easy answers. In terms of utilities, will these apartments be all electric, or will they be using natural gas?
So phases 1 and 2 use natural gas. We're seriously considering and looking into going all electric for phases 3 and 4. We're not there yet. A lot of it has to do with whether or not the utility could give us the power that we need to do that. But that's under consideration right now as part of our construction development.
Okay, then the idea of possibly putting in charging stations for cars will be probably limited by the amount of power you can get?
Maybe, but we will include those as well.
Yeah, just on that exact point, so the code is kind of moving towards an all-electric infrastructure for all kind of housing moving forward. One of the big challenges in phase 1 and 2, which use natural gas for heating, was the loads demanded by EV chargers. We have about, I think, 30 spaces on phase 1. We doubled that on phase 2 and actually had to pull it back to meet our load letters that we got from the utilities. So that's going to be something I think that we're all, we kind of struggle with in the future. But it is, as Brian said, something we're going to consider and kind of find the best path forward for. So.
I noticed that the apartments appear to have a lot of windows.
Yes.
Do you know what E-values you'll be using?
I'd have to point to my architect, Steve, but we do have a energy model required as part of our building permit submission. So they do meet, I think we might surpass code and be close to stretch code.
Considering utilities are a problem, I would hope you would far exceed the minimum requirements.
We do exceed code, yes.
And then the next question is, where do you put your snow?
On our civil plan, we'll have two things. If it still snows, which generally it seems to snow less and less every year. We have designated snow storage locations throughout the property that are identified on our civil plans. In cases where, for instance, in 2015, we were building a project in Everett, Massachusetts. We had 120 inches of snow that winter. We actually had to contract trucking off the snow, and that's obviously a cost that the property bears. So,
Thank
if
you.
our storage capacity areas are full, we truck it off-site.
Thank you.
Yep.
I just wanted to note details like snow storage would be handled likely through site plan approval, which would be the next phase. If we're successful with a special permit here, we'll be coming back next year for site plan approval, and that goes through the council. So council's site plan approval authority as well, but obviously we work closely with the site plan committee, and we would also need Conservation Commission approval for these phases as well.
Any other questions from the public? Any other questions from the public? Any other questions from the public? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Public speaking in opposition. Any members of the public speaking in opposition? Members of the public speaking in opposition? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Questions from the city councilors? Councilor Orm.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your presentation as well. Actually, two of my questions were already answered, thanks to Mr. Peck. Thank you, Mr. Peck, for your questions. And I would promote more charging stations as time goes on. More. Just for curiosity, though, on that point, how many people are requesting charging stations percentage-wise presently?
So I can get you actual percentages, but we haven't. So when I say we scaled back phase 2, phase 1 as well, we put in maybe 15 stations, but we gave future conduits to another 10 or so. With the 15 we have right now, we haven't had any issues where someone's hogging it or people want to charge it, don't get it. Same thing on phase 2, we ran sleeves basically for 60 stations. I think we pulled back and did a 20 again, and then as we get kind of closer, we'll monitor the EV adoption rate on phase 1 and then implement that in phase 2.
And time will tell as
I mean, I think we all see the trend is only growing, and it's just, you know, you want to future-proof these buildings for EV infrastructure as well as IT is another big thing where, you know, we have to kind of just think forward in terms of bandwidth.
So your company studies the trends and is aware of it.
Yeah, very plugged in.
And I hope you get electricity and don't depend on natural gas, but I know there's a prior council in here that will stress that issue, and I would support it. Curious on demographics, because you must have information on some of the residents that are there. What percent works in Marlborough, or within, say, 5 miles of where they live?
We have a breakdown of how far people are from work, and I would say about 70% of our residents are within 30 minutes of their work destination. So it's, because of fair housing, we have kind of general boxes we can check in terms of what questions we can ask, but the majority of people are within 30 minutes. That obviously spans, you know, depending on traffic, you could be almost in downtown Boston, or you might be closer. The one thing I'll say is that, you know, I think the trend of work from home, flexibility, you go there anytime during the week, and there are people kind of setting up shop, working remotely as well. So that's obviously good to see.
And it's a star on the map where you're located. You're directly to the highway.
Yeah.
2 minutes you could walk to the highway.
Exactly, exactly. One of the reasons we were very attracted to the location.
Some of the woods are being left naturally in there, all that green space, or you're planting all that?
No, so the wetlands that kind of cuts the site in half, you know, if you scroll to the trail photo, I think it's just maybe one up or two up.
So a lot of that's natural.
Yeah, so everything in the middle.
Yeah, John,
all this is existing.
John, if I could, stay close to the microphone and
Sorry.
take the microphone.
Yeah, everything in this photo that you see, aside from the, you know, the built boardwalks and the, you know, trail fences, was existing. So all the wetlands we've worked with Priscilla and her team to kind of weave this through. You know, when we first came up with the idea of doing this trail system, I don't think we had any idea how difficult, complicated it would be, just given the sensitivity of the area we're working. But working with Priscilla and her team, we were able to kind of weave this trail, you know, elegantly through, connect phase 1 and 2. We'll do that for 3 and 4 as well, and then onto the, as Brian pointed out, across the street to the larger trail system for.
Excellent. I commend you for that, because as more and more studies, medical and so forth, for health and well-being, being outside is a tremendous benefit, better than medicine to some degree.
Exactly.
So I'm sure you're aware of that trend as well, and it's being expressed by the medical community. Irrigation on plants that you do have there, like the trees you're going to grow around the roads and so forth, where do you get your water for that irrigation?
That's all private water. We don't have a gray water system in the building. It's something we've looked at for other projects. It gets a little complicated with water storage, but everything is private water that's, you know, metered for the project, and then, you know, we pay
When you
for
say private water, like a private well, irrigation well?
it. City water.
Oh, city water.
Yeah, so a private service, you know, from, we're paying customers.
We can talk more about that. I'm curious your demand on the water system, and how much is that demand percentage-wise over your total needs and demands. And water and sewer, obviously, that'll be discussed in urban affairs, I'm sure, too. I'm just very curious your demand on that, and, you know, what do we have for capacity in the city of Marlborough? I can tell you the Carroll treatment plant's right down the street from you. That's the MWRA's major treatment plan for the whole region out to Boston. So, but again, you always have to be concerned about, and that's why I asked about an irrigation well, how much demand is being taken from treated water versus an irrigation well for plants and so forth. So that'll be some of my questions in urban affairs. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Councilor
President.
Oro. Questions from the councilors? Councilor Doucette?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. When the boroughs was first being proposed, we got into a conversation about the use of solar panels. And might have been Andy or someone else was saying, oh, you know, at that point, solar was a no-brainer, canopies on top of parking lots, and, you know, it was going to be a slam dunk back then. How much solar panels have you deployed so far, or have you yet?
I don't know so if you scroll to the aerial photo of phase 1, you'll see our carport solar. The process, and so the entire building, phase 1 and phase 2, are solar ready, meaning the roof trusses are loaded to take solar, and and you can see the arrays here.
Yeah.
So the entire building is laid out to get a solar array installed. The way that process works, when you actually have to have the building fully stabilized, occupied, which we're just about now. They give you a full load, and then you go through the process with National Grid or Eversource to kind of get that metered and approved, which takes, if I could tell you how long this took
I
and
don't
to get just
understand.
this done.
So are you planning to put some solar panels on the roof of Phase 1?
This ownership group is currently exploring that, yes.
Okay. And then Phase 2 will also have solar because it looks like it's got a nice lean to it.
Nice pitched roof, correct.
Yeah. So, okay.
The engineering plans are the same from 1 to 2 in terms of conduits, back to the house meter,
Right.
engineered
Yeah.
to accept it, so.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Doucette. Councilor Pearlman.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you so much for the presentation. Could you turn back to the aerial image with all of the phases?
Yep.
Thank you. I'm curious, just I know that you said the wetlands cuts through the property. How much of a percentage is the wetlands for the entire site versus what you can build on?
Well, I'd have to point to one of my engineers to give me a good estimate, but I mean, you can see, essentially my finger width. I mean, the trails run through the wetlands on both sides of Phase 1 and 2. And same thing over here. We actually, as part of the initial kind of workings with the city staff, rearranged the orientation of the spine road because there's a vernal pool here in this location. So essentially the entire center of this project is wetlands. If you take a rough stab, maybe it's 30% of the total land area. And there's also a smaller wetlands kind of down here that cuts between the 2 phases of 4. And again, the reason we've done this 2 building is for that wetlands where most, if you recall when we got the original 2 phases approved, we decided to orient the buildings towards this kind of amenity we've created with the trails. We're doing the same thing here, but then obviously we wanted the retail to be accessible to people outside of the neighborhood as well, and so we put that on the kind of the hot corner, as it's called.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I know you discussed the benefit of the site plan review and the feedback that you received from Priscilla. I'm curious too, given the amount of flooding we've been seeing, I mean, a lot of residents have been sharing just how much the flooding is impacting their neighborhoods. I'm just curious, given the existing phases, if you all have been able to mitigate that amount of water, particularly now thinking about additional phases, how that might impact with the increased amount of rain that we've been seeing.
Great question. So one of the reasons we're actually separating the special permit from the site plan is exactly that. This project, what's currently approved is fully self-sufficient, meaning all of our stormwater 100-year flood is stored on site. That'll be the case with all 4 phases, except currently, if you did an aerial of the project today, there's an open water kind of detention area over here, down where Phase 4 is. That'll be relocated underground. Phase 2, we're actually exploring right now of putting our stormwater, which goes down and is stored over here, putting that underground as well. And then Joe can speak to, if anyone has an interest, we're looking at what's called blue roofs, meaning when you have a 100-year flood event, a lot of times the initial kind of deluge of water, you need a place to store you really want to slow your off-site transport of water. And so you can accommodate some of that on your roofing with flat roofs of, taking some of that rain, slowing the flow of it from your rooftop down into your stormwater detention system and then off-site. So currently the project fully sufficient in terms of stormwater, and then there's a lot of details to figure out in terms of like where we, in past projects we've put stormwater under sidewalks and Coltech units kind of throughout parking areas. We need to refine, understand the rock definition kind of on these 2 phases to determine where we can put that water.
Okay, well, it's certainly something I hope you continue to investigate, just how resilient the property can be given the amount of building structures, parking, just making sure that that is taken into consideration. And just a question with the 4A, 4B, are those connected?
Yes, there's actually a pedestrian walkway coming across from 4A to 4B.
Okay, and then the idea is that the 4B is both a amenity for the public and for the residents?
Exactly
so
that.
Crossover?
Exactly. So as we kind of think amenities and what keeps attracting people to live here when there's, other competing properties locally, the one thing we don't have is like a nice coffee shop or a breakfast spot you can just walk to. If everything, you do, I mean, the city's done a great job with their Complete Streets program of, it's a very steep hill, but you could ride to Apex Center. It'd be a great workout. And we know Councilor Ossining does that often, but we'd love to have something down here that, someone in Phase 3 or Phase 2 could walk the trail system and then cut across and get to easily.
Okay. Okay. Well, one thing I know it's come up, I think, in the previous phases, and I wasn't here for the original, but certainly when we talked about the units, is how to make it so that this entity is not isolated from the rest of the community.
Yep.
Obviously, having additional units does make it more of an enclave where people could, you know, they have the trails, they have this now amenity space, they would not necessarily have to leave and just get on the highway. And
Yep.
what are the ways that you all can better integrate this project with the entire community so that these residents, which, you know, maybe stay a long time, but given, you know, the apartment and the rate, I'm assuming they're here for a shorter period of time because they're working in a particular role, and we want to make sure that they're also welcomed and part of the community. So whatever that looks like, if it's the transportation networks or more engagement with some of the local businesses, I would like to see that a lot moving forward.
Yeah, we always pick, you know, local vendors for our events. We pick, you know, we have beers on tap, local beer on tap. I believe it's Lost Shoe, who we had an event with maybe last spring. A lot of our events are actually open to the public. You know, it's maybe not well advertised, but on social media, the borough you follow will have open house events that are, you know, anyone's able to come. We've done a great job with, you know, our ward councilor Christian of having events, making the space available for, you know, members of the community. That'll continue through all phases. And it's something we hear and just kind of continue to work on. Interestingly enough, we're actually going through the first kind of turns of leases, meaning we've had people who've lived there for a year who are now renewing, and we're at about a 70% retention rate, meaning 70%, and the average is around 50, right? Over time, it'll just kind of even out, but 70% of our residents who are staying, who leased, are staying for another round, and most of the renewals, or non-renewals, excuse me, are for relocations for work. So that's been a very interesting thing to kind of observe for the first time.
Okay, well, I appreciate your detailed answers and look forward to the discussion in urban affairs. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Perlman. Any other questions from the councilors? Questions from the councilors? Council Landers.
Mr. President, I'm pleased to see that Green District Boulevard goes right by Phase 2 and 3 out to Cedar Hill. Will you encourage people from Phase 2 and 3 to come out to Cedar Hill with signage, or is that a big thing? You know what I mean? Rather than have them cut right out to Semirano Drive. Because a certain number of people could be going, you know, into Southborough, down Cedar Hill,
Yep.
or stay on Cedar Hill and go Northborough. I'm just curious.
It's a good question, and it's something we actually talked about internally today. You know, Phase 4, I think the majority of it, obviously, of parking is off Green District Boulevard here, and we'll exit out Semirano and then onto the highway or down towards Route 9. Phase 3, again, the leasing kind of entrance to the building is envisioned to be this kind of node in the building right here. So the main parking is in this location. And again, we'd imagine people would take this route to then, you know, hit the highway system or head downtown. If there was a concern with, you know, Cedar Hill's in the process of getting redone or at least improved, a concern with traffic load on that, and again, we'll be back for a site plan to kind of review that in detail. You know, we can figure out a way if you know, this is maybe a one-way in or something, but I think, you know, that then begs the question, fire department access, et cetera. We kind of go through that process at that time.
I'm trying to pick out my spot. I watched all of Phase 1 being built. I go out there 2 or 3 times a week.
Yep.
Now I'm trying to figure where I'm gonna park. You know,
We can clear a little spot. I mean, I'll get Priscilla's permission, but we can maybe clear a little ledge right here and set up a, you know, crow's nest.
One guy thought I was a spy, you know, park here across the street in Home Logic. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Council Landers. Any other questions from the councilors? Council Orem.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe you provided us the impact on our services such as public safety at the previous overlay district. If that can be brought with you to urban affairs again, so we know what I believe you had impacts on the school and the expected students, maybe compare that to what you're actually seeing in Phase 1. It'd be good to have when we review this at that time, just so we know the impact.
Yeah, we have that information. We have, you know, confirmed, we have a school bus stop at Phase 1. I think there's maybe 5 or 6. I have to go back to my notes. School-age kids in Phase 1. And then we spoke to the fire chief and the police chief just about, you know, calls and impacts, and it's...
It'd just be good to refresh ourselves.
Yeah, of course. We'll have that information
back with the overlay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Orem.
Thank you, Mr.
Any other
President.
questions from the councilors? Questions from the councilors? Questions from the councilors? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing and the entire public hearing, and this is in urban affairs. Thank you
very
Attorney
much.
Fox. Agenda item number 4.
Now is the time for the public hearing on the proposed zoning ordinance amendment to Chapter 650 zoning of the code relative to definitions of affordable housing in the Marlborough Village District, order number 2223-100-8721H.
Again, we'll conduct this public hearing in the same 4 stages. Public speaking in favor, questions from the public, public speaking in opposition, and then questions from the city councilors. So we'll start with the public speaking in favor, starting with the, not the applicant, but the sponsor. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Katie Roby. I'm a city councilor. I reside at 97 Hudson Street in Marlborough. I would like to begin going back in time to September 18th, 2013, when the Urban Land Institute's Technical Assistance Panel visited Marlborough at the request of the Marlborough Economic Development Corporation and submitted a report that MEDC would use to, quote, bring forward substantial zoning changes to the city designed to stimulate economic growth in the downtown area, end quote. The January 27th, 2014 City Council meeting agenda included a communication from Tim Cummings, MEDC's executive director at the time, with the report of the Urban Land Institute, which was referred to Urban Affairs. Council minutes from February 10th, 2014 include a report of the Urban Affairs meeting where order number 14-100-5670 was discussed, with the report ending with, quote, Tim Cummings agreed to form a committee to further study the details of a zoning change, gather stakeholder input, and make a recommendation back to the City Council by the beginning of May, end quote, and the item was tabled in committee. The February 24th City Council minutes include the final Urban Land Institute report, which was filed. I think it's important to review the next steps taken. On February 12th, 2014, a posting for a downtown study group listing 7 meetings was received, with February 20th set as the first meeting date of the working group, and others were spread throughout June. On April 3rd, MEDC sponsored a downtown Marlborough public forum. At the May 22nd, 2014 working group meeting, Tim Cummings sent documents from Cynthia Wall, a MAPC consultant, to discuss design elements. On June 3rd, the working group held a meeting with MAPC. On June 19th, the working group met at Memorial Hall to discuss documents from MAPC. A June 27th email from MEDC stated that a study committee looking to, quote, reinvigorate downtown Marlborough through new zoning, end quote, wrapped up its review. And on July 8th, the City Council was sent 4 documents with the proposed Marlborough Village District zoning, and the Council received notice of public meeting to be held on July 17th, titled, See What the Future Holds for Marlborough's Downtown. August 25th, 2014 City Council meeting had an order, Marlborough Downtown Village District zoning, which was referred to Urban Affairs, and a joint City Council and Planning Board hearing was set for October 20th. At the public hearing on October 20th on the proposed amendment to add a new section, Downtown Village, Tim Cummings, Mark Rassicott, and Cynthia Wall from MAPC spoke about the proposal. 4 other people spoke in favor of the zoning amendment. There were no questions from the public, and no one spoke in opposition. There were then 3 Urban Affairs meetings, one on October 28th, one on November 6th, and a final one on November 10th. All of these meetings included extensive question and answer from city councilors on the language and updated drafts. At the November 10th Urban Affairs meeting, the committee voted 5-0 to recommend approval of the draft language as amended through these meeting reviews. And this was reported out at the November 17th meeting. There was a suspension to refer to the solicitor to be put in proper form, and the order was approved on December 1st, 2014. This zoning change allowed a mixed-use development including multifamily residential uses, hotels, and hotels with conference facilities to be built by right in the downtown village district. Multifamily dwellings of 1 or more structures containing 3 or more dwelling units on a single lot were also allowed by right. It created design standards and non-mandatory design guidelines to complement the design standards to provide, quote, a guide to the desired appearance and quality of design in the Marlborough Village District, end quote. It set a maximum of residential units for which building permits could be issued in a calendar year at 100, with an increase allowed by special permit. To encourage development, a minimum height of 35 feet and a maximum height of 70 feet was set, except where proposed structure was within 50 feet of a residential district boundary where it was 52 feet. However, with the grant of a special permit, the maximum building height, including those buildings within 50 feet of a residential district boundary, could be increased to 7 stories and up to 85 feet. These height limits didn't include any roof-mounted mechanical equipment. It had language for parking requirements for residential projects at .75 for studio and 1 bedroom and 1.25 spaces for 2 bedrooms, with spaces in city-owned garages and lots within 1,000 feet of the development allowed to be counted to fulfill the required spaces with a payment in lieu. The payment in lieu of providing parking required a one-time fee of $10,000 per parking space, with the ability to reduce the parking by 10% if one of the on-site spaces was dedicated to a car share. In June of 2015, we also amended 65026 affordable housing, where developments of 20 or more units would have 15% of the dwelling units constructed for home ownership or rental be made affordable at affordable prices, with the ability to buy out this provision at $50,000 per affordable unit. Additional language stated that the provision of affordable housing did not apply to projects within the Marlborough Village District. On November 5th, 2018, the council approved site plans for 28 South Bolton Street, a project with 36 residential units and 30 parking spaces. The project required payment in lieu of 14 spaces times that $10,000, or $140,000. On February 25th, 2019, the council approved a special permit for the Tavern on the Green, 57 Main Street, due to its request to increase the lot coverage from 80 to 84%. The project was a 5-story, 86,600 square foot building with 11,000 square feet of commercial space, 55 units, and 83 parking spaces. On October 7, 2019, the council approved a special permit for Eon Main due to its height of 81 feet. It had 67 units and 43 parking spaces. The council also approved the site plan, which included information for required 66 parking spaces, with 43 provided, resulting in a payment in lieu for 24 parking spaces, again times that $10,000, prior to the issuance of the first certificate of occupancy. Now let's go to 2022 and 2023. I had been thinking about the 3 projects we approved, along with new requirements for housing by right required as an MBTA community. I met with Council President Ossing and City Solicitor Grossfield to discuss possible changes to zoning. On November 2nd, 2022, a draft zoning amendment was on the council agenda. The amendments covered a new definition for mixed use in 650-5 and amended 650-26 affordable housing so that the site plan approvals for multifamily dwellings as part of a mixed-use development would be included in the requirement for affordable housing, and it removed the buyout. The council held its public hearing on December 19th. The planning board held its public hearing on December 5th, but made its favorable recommendation on December 15th. It suggested in its letter that affordability be defined, for the council to consider impediments to site development, and this may change when more information was forthcoming on MBTA communities. No one from the public spoke in favor or opposed at either of these meetings. Urban Affairs took up the matter on February 24th and made some recommendations for changes to the draft. It met again on March 6th and voted to recommend approval of the amended document, reported out at the March 13th City Council meeting, and asked to vote that night due to the March 20th deadline. It also voted to ask the solicitor to draft new language to amend 650 regarding the affordability levels and rent using information from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The council approved the order at its March 13th meeting. The April 10th council agenda included the mayor's letter where he vetoed the order, stating, quote, "The proposed language is placing added restrictions and will not only prohibit downtown development, but all housing developments within the city," end quote. The veto was referred to Urban Affairs and tabled until April 24th. At the April 19th Urban Affairs meeting, we discussed Council Ossing's suggestion to reduce the 15% affordable requirement for 8 or more units to 12%, and deleting the language regarding developments of 20 or more units requiring 20% at affordable prices. It was agreed to let the mayor's veto stand and have the chair submit a revised order. The mayor's veto was sustained on April 24th, and this was referred back to Urban Affairs, and I went to work on a new draft. I had responded to an email on March 28th that was sent asking questions about the new proposal for 57 Main Street, where I stated that none of the 3 projects we approved in the downtown village district were built. Maybe my comment spurred the new developer at 28 South Bolton to pull a building permit and begin work on that project as approved by the council. The new design for 57 Main Street included 99 residential units and required 88 parking spaces. The plans provided for 28 parking spaces, which left 60 to be allowed with payment in lieu and a possible reduction to $520,000 due to car share being on site. I don't think that when we created the downtown village zoning that anyone envisioned a developer coming in with a project that had 99 units with 88 required spaces, yet only provided 28 of those spaces. This got me to thinking about the need to look at Marlborough Village District language as a whole, and draft language was submitted for discussion at the June 14th Urban Affairs meeting, but it was not advertised so that the committee, with input from other councilors, could create a draft document. This document was available to the public, who could contact councilors with their comments and concerns. I know I received no calls. The Urban Affairs Committee then met on July 10th, taking up a 6-page document, 2 additional pages from myself, and 2-page document from President Ossing. We continued discussion on July 11th and finalized discussion on July 17th. At the July 24th council meeting, the draft was referred to the solicitor to be put in proper form so it could be advertised. And we are here today for the public hearing on this new document. We did not repeat the process for public input that took place in 2014. Instead, letting the members of Urban Affairs with input from other councilors create a document that they felt would mitigate the issues they have noted. This public hearing gives the public an opportunity to ask questions and voice opinions on those proposed amendments to the zoning. I have to express my gratitude to the councilors, both those on Urban Affairs and those who aren't, who attended the 3 long meetings as we discussed all the ins and outs of the draft to create this document. I had created the draft, but knew it would mean give and take by all of us to get to a final document. You can read the minutes of those meetings or listen to the tapes to hear the passion and conviction of the council members as we discuss this. Several of the current councilors were not part of the zoning to create the downtown village district, but they currently are aware of its issues. For me, it was clear in hindsight that some of the language needed to be amended to fit the current dynamics of the city and the country coming off the pandemic, where many people remain working from home, thus not freeing up spaces in the parking garages that downtown residents use now, and that affordable housing is needed everywhere in the city, including the downtown village district. I will briefly cover the changes to the zoning. Remembering the planning board comments regarding the need to define affordability, language was added to 655 definitions to define area median income as set forth each year by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and a definition was added for eligible household. In 650-17 Table of Uses, mixed use was amended to remove the language of a vibrant downtown, as mixed use can be anywhere in the city, and its use was changed from by right to special permit in the downtown village district. After much discussion, hotels and hotels with conference centers were changed from by right in the downtown village district to special permit. 650-26 affordable housing was amended to include a simple purpose with developments of 8 or more units in all zoning districts for multifamily dwellings, or mixed use with multifamily dwellings required to include at least 12% of its units as affordable, that they be eligible for inclusion in the state's subsidized housing inventory, and available to households at no more than 80% of AMI. We removed the ability to build the affordable units at an alternate site, and we removed the provision that this language did not apply to projects granted special permits in the Marlborough Village District. We had input from Mr. Montelli, developer of the Green District, and deleted language that would make some units available to households at 60% of AMI or lower. We amended 650-34 design standards to clarify that in addition to design standards, applications for special permits and/or site plan application will also be reviewed using the design review guidelines for Marlborough Village District, and amending to add that all special permits shall be subject to the design standards. We clarified details in predominant wall material after input from architect Larry Reeves, who was involved in the original working group. We amended 650-34 so that spaces in public garages and lots within 1,000 feet of the development could be counted to fill required spaces with payment in lieu. Knowing that parking in downtown can be hard to find, we also went back and forth on payment in lieu of parking, finally agreeing to amend the language so that any new commercial or mixed-use structure that is required to provide parking spaces may request to make payment to the city in lieu of providing for part of the on-site required parking, not to exceed 20% of that required on-site spaces, but this payment is only authorized by a special permit and not guaranteed, and it must be in parking spaces designed for overnight parking and subject to conditions of the special permit. The one-time fee for per space was amended to $25,000 per space, and the ability to reduce parking due to car lending service was also deleted. We also had long discussions on height of structures, finally settling on a minimum height of 35 feet and clarifying 2.5 stories, with the maximum of 60 feet or 4 stories. This change was also made in 650-41, the table of lot areas, yards, and heights of structures, where note number 12 was amended so that special permits may allow an increase in height for a roof deck, but deleted the 7 stories and 85 feet. Finally, we added that these amendments do not apply to any special permit or site plan approval for which an application was submitted or a special permit or site plan was issued before the date of the first publication of notice of the public hearing for these amendments. That date was September 1st, 2023, according to Mr. Clerk. Thank you for indulgence in my lengthy statement. That finishes my comments.
Thank you, Councilor Roby. Are there any other members of the public speaking in favor?
Good evening. My name is Steve Peck. I live on Victoria Lane. I took the time to watch the videos of the committee as they negotiated these changes. I am still awake. The pages, I counted 9 pages for this one section. 9 pages of single-spaced typed information, which is almost impossible to read. I'm college educated. I have an above-average IQ. But this has boggled my mind that there's so many details. Still, having watched the committee work on this so long and so hard, having gotten expert advice on putting this together, I would encourage the councilors to approve this. I don't know that I could have done it any better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peck. Any other members of the public speaking in favor? Any other members of the public speaking in favor? Any other members of the public speaking in favor? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Next portion is questions from the public. I ask the clerk to make a note of communication.
Communication was received today from Larry Reeves of Reeves Design Associates, who had some comments and questions.
And those will be provided to the Urban Affairs Committee. Any other members of the public with questions? Any questions from the public? Any questions from the public? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Public speaking in opposition. Hang on, hold on.
May I start?
You may. Please
It's
form
based
a
on
line if you'd
age,
like.
My name is Arthur Bergeron. I live at 27 Prospect Street. I actually live in the downtown Village District. And I just have I'm respectfully opposing some of the proposed changes, some that specifically apply to the downtown Village District for reasons that I want to summarize. I'm going to do that by starting with a question and then giving you a little history and then ending with just a suggestion. The question is, how many of you just love the downtown? I mean, just love it, you know? And by the way, and I say downtown, I mean like between Main Street and Granger Boulevard and everything kind of in between. I mean, do you find it, it's like exciting, it's nice buildings and commercial enterprises prospering and a ton of people walking up and down the sidewalks. How many people have you just said, now that you're coming to visit me in Marlborough, let's go downtown, just for downtown. So the interesting thing about that is that our downtown right now, it was the conscious result of a well-meaning, but in hindsight, a bad decision by the mayor and the city councilors 60 years ago, when they bought into what was really a national trend called, they drank the Kool-Aid, which was also a 60s type expression. They bought into the national trend of urban renewal. Urban renewal. So what urban renewal was, it meant, I grew up watching this because this was the result of suburbanization and of single-family houses and the developments that occurred in Marlborough, and people moved to single-family houses out of the cities, and all of the commercial enterprises moved out of the little downtowns into strip malls, where people from the single-family houses could go drive and park. And so there was this sense that the downtowns were deteriorating, and so the question was what to do. And the answer came from national experts, right, all around the country. They said the answer really is, in essence, what you do is you get rid of the downtown or you replace it with the suburbs, a strip mall. And so there was a huge program which Marlborough benefited from. We got a boatload of money to basically tear down all the buildings downtown, especially those that were the traditional downtown buildings with a commercial enterprise downstairs and people living upstairs, a mixed-use building. We got a boatload of money. We tore down a ton of buildings. We even built a road. That was part of the whole suburbanization. We built Granger Boulevard. That was brand new. And then, on top of that, we changed the zoning to make sure that that downtown would not happen again. We prohibited We prohibited mixed-use buildings, first. Second, we required, and this was never the case before, that every building had its own parking on site, because it was just like the suburbs. So it would be just like the suburbs. You know, you can come in, and we said, so no residential. So what we were hoping for was what we got. We got, over a period of about 60 years, exactly what we wanted. We got single-story commercial buildings, nothing tall. We eliminated all the people downtown, and we had a lot of parking. We built a lot of parking. Interestingly, during those 60 years, the largest structure that was built downtown was not a building. It was a parking garage. It's the parking garage that's behind this building that Mike Hogan got money for from the governor, because the premise was, after 30 years of this urban renewal, nothing had happened downtown, and there was no action, and it was decided what we needed was more parking. That was the reason why it wasn't working. So we built the parking garage, right? Nothing else got built. Nothing else got built. And so about 9 years ago, well, Katie Roby did a wonderful job, Councilor Roby did a wonderful job of kind of talking about what happened then. A group of people, including the then council president, Trish Pope, and the then urban affairs chair, Joe Delano, got together and worked with the mayor and MEDC and put together a group to talk about how it could be that we could kind of make downtown a really special place. And we started off with the fundamental thing that had to change was we needed people downtown. We needed people living downtown, upstairs, who were going to come downstairs to use the restaurants and the shops and all of that stuff, just what the original downtown was. So then, so the question was then how to make that happen. And so we realized that we were going to need to do something to motivate developers, because we weren't going to build it, right? It wasn't going to be city money. We could motivate developers to come downtown. And the way we were going to do that was, first, we said, we're going to make mixed-use buildings as of right, so that no developer needs to think that they're going to spend a couple $100,000 on lawyers and engineers and architects and find themselves getting turned down just because the council didn't like it, you know? So first, it was going to be as of right. Second, we were going to change the parking requirement. We were going to eliminate, which we eliminated, the requirement that there be any parking for a commercial enterprise. We changed the numbers, as Councilor Roby pointed out, regarding residential. But we also said, regarding residential, that you could buy out of it, that you could, in lieu of producing the necessary parking, buy at a price of $10,000 per space. You could buy out of it. The presumption was that that 10,000 was not going to build a new parking garage. 10,000 per space was not going to build a parking garage, but that we didn't need it. We didn't need new spaces because we had a boatload of spaces. That's one of the things that MAPC found when they did the study back in 2014, that we had all kinds of spaces. There was this myth that we needed more spaces. So we felt we wanted to get the initial developers in to get this going, so that we felt that if things started really working, well then at that point we could increase to a higher amount per space. And then finally, we decided that the affordable housing provision in Marlborough, while it was appropriate, and certainly we need affordable housing, was less important than the importance of having that incentive that comes from knowing if you're building a unit that you're going to be able to get full price for that unit. Because we wanted, initially at least, to get all of those things to happen. Now, in the 52 years before we did this, and before this ordinance was adopted, there was not one single proposal before the city council to build a multi-story building in downtown Marlborough, with the exception of the Masons building and the Marlborough Savings Bank. In the 8 years since this got adopted, there were 8 proposals, all, by the way, approved by the city council, on 4 different lots. And one of them's actually under construction. I would have liked to have thought that it would have happened faster than that, but it didn't. So now you have a set of proposals before you, which have developed as a result of concerns I know that resulted from some of those developments and some of those proposals. And you need to decide whether to adopt them, which leads to my suggestion. My suggestion is this. As Councilor Roby pointed out, as some of the other speakers who are on MEDC are going to point out, we went through a process in 2014. We really did get a lot of input from a lot of people. In January, you're going to see a bigger shift politically in Marlborough than you've seen in 12 years. One of you may become the mayor. At least the two councilors who are running for mayor are not going to be sitting here, and there may be a number of new councilors. You're going to have a whole new group of people. Postpone this until that happens, and then have that mayor and those city councilors do what we did, which was really do the outreach. Get a consultant, bring people together, do meetings. I understand that there was, and Councilor Roby pointed out, anybody could have commented, but there wasn't the same kind of real outreach that we promoted back in 2014. And it may be that as a result of all of that, you will find that you want to adopt exactly the changes that you're doing, because you don't want what we were trying to achieve, which is a dynamic downtown. You may decide, in answer to my first question, that downtown is just terrific, that you just love it, right? Or that you don't love it, but that you're not willing to pay the price to make it be something really special, right? But that's for you to decide. But I think that the decision about the details, which are in Councilor Roby's, in the council's proposal, need to be talked about in that broader context. Because one thing I can guarantee you, if these proposals pass, what you've got and what you've had for 60 years is what you're going to have for a long time into the future. So you just need to decide, do you really love it here? I mean, do you love this down, and is that really what you want in the future? Thank you very much, Council.
Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you, members of the Council.
Yes, sir.
Damon Michaels, Chase Road. So we were sold on years ago the fact that that the changes downtown were around mixed use. The core of this is eliminating the mixed use by right and changing it to a special permit. This is not what the public wanted at the time. Additionally, the cost of the amount of spaces going up and the fact that things will be a special permit indicates to me that the big companies will come in with their lawyers and their people and do the things that they want to do, and it will not be the smaller developers. On top of that, I think that we should go back and revisit with the public, like we did the outreach before, and get plenty of input on it. Because the mixed use is what we were sold, and mixed use changing, something that the public wants to hear about. And they want to hear about parking. They want to know what's going to be done about parking situation. And it's very clear from the Facebook groups that people were not reached out to at some level years ago. So let's give them another chance. This is all going to change, make up here that we see, and I feel like it's really important that we do not approve this, that we wait and go through it methodically and get the public input again. And we reach out harder, twice as hard, 4 times as hard this time, because some of those people didn't get heard. Thanks.
Thanks, Darren.
Excuse me, I didn't hear your name.
Damon Michaels, Chase Road.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. President and councilors. Joseph Delano, Harper Circle. I was loath to come here tonight, not because I'm not glad to see you all, I am. But, you know, I really had my fill by the time I finished my last term. One of the reasons is that I felt like these days there's so much hate out there. There's so much vitriol. There's so many people that won't listen to what you say. So I'm going to make some statements, and I just ask that you please hear me. I know everything that you folks are doing here, and certainly Mrs. Roby, is done with the absolute best of intentions. I absolutely know that. I disagree with a few things, and I understand that we have all been frustrated by the lack of what's developed thus far downtown. I just, we thought we had great projects, and then they vanish, and then projects morph into things that really people don't like. And I get that. There's a saying in my business, I'm in the investment business, and that's that the stock market never reacts, it only overreacts. And so sometimes we tend to have a problem or a project in which we try and make these broad changes that affect the whole city or the whole area that's germane to what we're doing. And I think that we probably want to think through the fact that, yes, we've got some things starting now, but if we look at the last few years, before we hit COVID, interest rates were pretty reasonable, and then even during COVID, rates were so low, money was free. Money was free for developers, just about, and I say that relatively free, to build these projects. Their profits would have been much greater, and still we weren't getting things happening that we wanted. So when we see these projects or a project that we don't like, I think that it's important for us to understand that the reaction should not be to do things that are going to make it more difficult to develop downtown. There was a reason we didn't add more parking spaces. And it's not because we or the public and the people, and we had dozens and scores of people who lived right down in this area that came to these meetings. And they understood what we were talking about. And it wasn't that we don't like parking, but let's revisit the principles of what we wanted to do, right? We wanted to revitalize the downtown for a myriad of reasons. For the people who already live here, for the companies that were moving into Marlborough, for economic development. When we have vacant lots, we don't get very much in taxes, right? And we get a one-story building versus a 6-story building. The difference is huge in value and what we can tax, thereby taking pressure off of other residents in the city. So we want to make sure that as we're making changes, we understand, or the question is, do we understand what these changes will do to development? If we tell the developers, well, now you can't buy out of certain things, you have to have so much parking, well, what does that do to the cost structure? What does that mean to their lot size? How much can they develop? What does that mean to the values over the next 30 years that we can build or not build? Because now we got parking lots. Downtown parking lots they're just not a good thing to build, right? It's one thing if you're building up on top of the parking structure, which is a different thing entirely. But what happens when over the long term we now have lost all these opportunities, or a developer's there, they're pretty shrewd characters. All right, this is what the changes mean. Wow, I don't know if I can make a profit. I'm going to go somewhere else. And I guess people have been going somewhere else anyway. I'll get to that one reason that I think. But we have to understand, if we're going to make it harder to develop, it's going to be harder to develop, and we're going to get less development. I don't think that's what we want to do. Great intentions, I completely understand that. But I don't think that's what we want to do. And I just ask to have you consider pumping the brakes on a little bit. One of the other things I want to talk about, and here I don't want you to get upset because I think affordable housing is wonderful. I think low-income housing is wonderful. But adding more of it right downtown is a question about whether it makes sense. The most expensive real estate per square foot is right out there, folks. It's not the business park, it's right out there. I think you all know that. I think you all know that. let me ask you this. Do we have a lack of affordable and low-income housing downtown? Are there not, what, is it 200 units of low-income senior housing? Just, a block down there? And you've seen the apartments. I don't know if you've been in. I'm sure some of you have been in the apartments here. They are not the lap of luxury. They are not what we saw on that screen a half an hour ago, right? These are very modest apartments. So what we have existing almost entirely downtown is low income and affordable moderate housing. Should we not think, and this is not as a cruel person, this is just to say, yes, we should do affordable housing, but is that the right place for it? For you as the city leaders to say, okay, I need to figure this out so that over the next 20, 30 years, we're designing things properly so we get the values that we need, we do our moral duty. How do we put these things together, right? So I want you to consider that, because aside from the fact that developers will develop differently, right? They'll develop different products because they're taking less money in, so they have to build them differently, which may mean we get less value to tax over the long term. And the other part of it is, and again, I want to say this carefully, but we need people downtown who have excess money to spend, so they can start coming to restaurants and pubs and all the new shops and things that everybody wants us to develop, and we need the people with that disposable income. And I know, I want you to hear me. I understand, I'm not saying downtown is for rich people. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that we have to think through what we're trying to build here, right? If you look at some of the other areas, we see people that can just walk downstairs. They may have one car. They may not have a car anymore. They may be retired and sold their house, on one side or the other of Marlborough. And they're here, and you want them to go to the restaurants and do all those kind of things. We talked about this 10 years ago. We were very clear about this. And again, it's not to be that guy, because I'm out of this now, folks. It's up to you. But how are you going to try and make your restaurant successful and make the next restaurant want to come in, instead of saying, how do they keep doing that in Hudson? What's going on over there? I don't know. So I just ask you to think about it. It's tricky. It's uncomfortable to even talk about. Okay? So please take it in that spirit. I'm just trying to think about long-term planning here for the next, as Mr. Bergeron talked about, the next 60 years. And one of our problems that has been the bane of my existence, as many of the councilors know, is that we so badly misuse the parking that we have. Really, it's political malpractice that we let people park all day long for free in the best parking spots. Where do people do that? Anybody go out to Waltham, go out to dinner in Waltham? That doesn't work there. Go to Boston, go to most successful cities, you're not seeing that. What you normally see is the best parking spaces are either you pay a little bit or there's an hour or 2 hour limit. You don't have to necessarily charge people, but you might say you can park there, but for 2 hours. Or you charge, $3 for this, another block down it's $2, another block down it's $1, and another 4 blocks it's free. If any of you worked in Boston like I did for many years, walking 5, 6 blocks, 7, 8 blocks was nothing. You did it because that was a cheap parking garage, and we bundled up and we thought nothing of it. You come out to the suburbs, if there's not a space right in front of that, wherever I'm going, I'm going to go home in a state of high dudgeon. But people learn, right? There's a lot of places in Hudson, there's parking garages or parking lots. You can't necessarily park everywhere you want to all the time. So I ask you to think about another way to encourage development is to use the great resources we already have. And I realize it's the CDA and the mayor kind of control that. We had the chance to get those parking garages a few years back. They needed, $5 million in repairs, and I suggested, hey, give us the thing. Give us those garages, and we'll control them. I got support from everybody, but I think 10 of you. But, you know, that happens sometimes, so maybe it wasn't as good an idea as I thought. So I just asked you to try and think through some of these things so that we're encouraging development, because we need it. Because in case people don't know, we have a problem here. When was the last time somebody came in to build a big office building? Yeah, not, right? They want to turn what we have into apartments. So we got to think about ways to build revenue for the future, because we're still going to need police and firemen and teachers and all of our great city workers. So we have to really think about the most expensive real estate in the city and how to husband those resources so that they grow, so that we can build value and tax them, take the pressure off of our residents. So I just ask you to consider those things, and I appreciate your time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Joe. Any other members of the public speaking in opposition? Members of the public speaking in opposition? Rich, I'm not letting you read that, just saying.
Well, I'm like Joe, I don't really like talking here. But it's
Rich,
important.
name and address.
Well, how'd you like to follow?
Here,
How would you like?
hang on. Name and address, Rich.
Richard Tomanek. I live at 1 Cortlandt Drive in Hudson, Massachusetts. I'm a 30-year resident of a business operator here in Marlborough. I own multiple properties here in Marlborough, rental properties. I'm well invested and pay a significant amount of property taxes in the city of Marlborough. I've been involved in the city for 30 years, from the Boys and Girls Club to baseball to Chamber of Commerce to Economic Development Office, et cetera. I was at the table when we talked about downtown. We talked about doing what we're doing downtown. I wish I was up here talking about it in favor. I wanted to be. I think the whole downtown district is an important part of our conversation. Like Arthur and Joe, I think it's really important to talk about it. And everybody has the best of intentions going through this. That being said, name the number of buildings that you'd really like to see here in the next 10 years that are here today. And how do you change that? You know, others talk about in the city about a stabilized residential tax rate. We talk about live, work, and play in the city of Marlborough. We talk about only 8% of our people that work in Marlborough actually live here in Marlborough. Why is that? Housing, quality housing, et cetera. I don't have all the answers to that, but I know there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of it, that do it professionally. I'd like to ask about the transparency of the process. I know, Councilor Warren, transparency has always been important to you and many of the councilors. The process that we've gone through before in this 8-month project was incredibly transparent, that had a lot of stakeholders at the table. Business owners, landlords, the community, that came to the conversation and had a talk in a room that wasn't quite as intimidating as this room. It's kind of intimidating. That being said, we as a community have to pay the beast, and the beast to me is the city budget. And the city budget, when I moved here, was about $50 or $55 million, 28 years ago. It's rapidly approaching $200 million, and it's going to get to $400 million in the next 30. How do you pay for that? Well, you have to have a residential tax rate that works, and you have to have new development and things that work on that side. The city in the last 10 years, I think, Bergeron, the numbers guy, the golden egg guy, he's talking about $1.5 billion in new growth. Well, what's it need to be in the next 10 years? What's it need to be in the years after that? People buy into things because it's a good place. Marlborough's an amazing place. I've chosen to raise my family in. It'd be in Marlborough, but I couldn't find a house at the time because of housing availability. But I am in housing now. But I choose to live in this area, and I choose to be in Marlborough today, involved in the city, because I'm so passionate about the city of Marlborough. I'm passionate about MEDC because it's about the top line revenue to me for the city, for this thing to work, and for the school systems to get paid for, and for the quality services that we have.
I think the transparency is important, and I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with the level of transparency that this process has had. This is 8 months' worth of work. The city, the council, spends money every year for planning services that you all have at your disposal that can be used at any moment. I think the budget's $50,000 or $60,000. It's not been asked for by this body for the Economic Development Office to do some work, to hire the professionals in, to have the conversation, to talk about what the trends are in the industries, to talk about all the things that we probably want to know about before we make an arbitrary decision in a room with 8 or 11 that says, hey, this is what we think our city is looking for. I don't think that's the process to go. Candidates for mayor, councilors that are candidates, is that what you want the public to think about? This is our process? I have a list of things to talk about. I can't talk as long as they talk. Oh, God, I love listening to Arthur Bergeron, though. Live, work, and play is important, and downtown's important. Hudson's, what they've done to transform Hudson is amazingly cool, and I wish we could figure out a way to do it downtown. There's some great projects that have been here that we haven't been able to get off the ground for various reasons, and it really is disappointing. I understand that 57 Main Street was not the perfect solution. It raised all kinds of R. Is that the right word? Amongst us, about 99 units and parking, et cetera. That doesn't mean you throw the baby out with the bathwater. Throw the bathwater out with the baby. I think there's a lot of conversation that still needs to happen, and I really think that this should be an open discussion, and we ought to put it down the road back in the next year when there's a conversation that can be had that includes all, that's very transparent, and that you're using the resources that you have available to you that we're just not asking the city to use. I think that covers pretty much all that I had. Again, I'm pretty passionate about our city, and I love all the work you guys are doing as well. I just think sometimes we need to take a step back and think about it some more. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Any other members of the public speaking in opposition?
Good evening.
Luis.
My name is Luis da Costa. I live at 30 Exit Hudson. I own a business in Marlborough at 33 Boston Post Road West. I'm part of the PFAC, of the Marlborough Hospital. I'm also I'm director of the Chamber of Commerce in Marlborough. I'm also director of the MEDC in Marlborough. I'm also director of the free medical program that we brought to Marlborough to attend the less privileged in this city, in this region. I have 2 questions for the council. The first one is, do those changes made to the original plan to revitalize downtown still achieve that purpose? Are we revitalizing downtown by changing to what's proposed now? Or that idea is no longer what we're pursuing? So that's my first question. By changing or by implementing those changes, are we achieving revitalization of downtown Marlborough? Second, a comment and a question. Why not expand the opportunity and the responsibility of such changes to public input and specialists and present a proposal for changes that is at a minimum as well structured as the one you want to change? So right now you have in your hands something that was studied, was put to public scrutiny, was voted and approved in a certain manner. Why not do the same process to implement changes to that work? And finally, recognizing that, of course, the gravity is not even comparable, but I want to just quote my friend Keith Reardon, who lost a brother and his father to suicide. And again, I recognize that's nothing to do with suicide, but the principle applies. And it says, never give a definitive solution to a temporary problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Luis. Any other members of the public speaking in opposition? Any other members of the public speaking in opposition? Any other members of the public speaking in opposition? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. Questions from the city councilors? Questions from the city councilors? Okay. Councilor Orton.
Thank you, Mr. President. First and foremost, I was here through most of the process, and back then, Councilor Delano knows I was debating the parking left and right with other councilors, and I still will to this day. In fact, I had right in front of me some research I did this summer, because I even think 25,000 of parking spaces underestimated. Got this from the direction through Meredith, wherever you are, thank you. And it was someone that works in a professional that said it can go up to 40,000 a space. So what that brings to mind is we need to stay fluid with any zoning bylaw. They should all be brought up every so often, as we did this time. It's important to continue to look at what you have on the books and what needs to be changed. So I'm kind of in agreement with this group that it is important to review zoning bylaws every so often, your capital plan every so often, that I would say every 5 years. More importantly, I've been fighting for years for a city planner that sits in this city hall and works for us, the city of Marlborough. And we don't have that yet, but I will continue to request that. It would help urban affairs to guide you through it. These people go to school and they become professionals and they're certified with credentials, just like many people out there that work in professional fields. You have credentials. So again, I think the concern is that we didn't have input, but Councilor Roby mentioned these were meetings that were addressed, open to the public, open to the councilors, open to MEDC, open to the chamber, and residents of this community that live on Main Street. Sorry, I'm not talking into the mic, but I wanted to recognize the efforts of the audience. I personally think my professional review is that Hudson got brought up. Well, Hudson's not Marlborough, and Hudson, do a fact check. Hudson's going through the same thing we are, and not as bad, because Hudson's a little bit more dynamic at this point. They had someone that attracted businesses to their downtown, specialized just in downtown development. And look at what they've done through the years. But they have a parking problem too. That's a true fact, and they're trying to figure that out too, so it's just not Marlborough. What concerns me though in Marlborough, we're a suburb. We're not Metro Boston. And a lot of the consultants, when I was on the council back then, were more from MAPC and looking more Metro Boston than the suburbs. We have to look at Northborough, Hudson, Framingham. That's as far as I would go with that. See how they're directing their issues with downtown development, because it happens to be everywhere.
If I could, Councilor Moore, this is, remember, it's questions from the council.
So that would be my first question, that we consider looking further into it, keep this very fluid, make a decision. We can make one now. It doesn't mean it's closed. The books are closed forever. Check what Hudson's doing right now, because Hudson got brought up several times, so that's one question. Another question is parking. Take into consideration, are we, and it's open right now, is 25,000 enough? Realistically, is that enough? And are there other solutions? I know Council Landers has mentioned how they do it towards the city, but again, remember, let's look at our region here. But that's another question. Is that reasonable? Are we being reasonable at 25? Was 10 too low? In my view, it was. Let's see. Another note is this, that's why you should stay fluid with your bylaws and so forth, and your ordinances in this case, because we're now post-COVID. Totally different from when we were discussing this back in 2012, 14. Councilor Austin was here as well. It's totally different. Parking's changed, demands have changed, and you know, I learn a lot from other developers who present as well. Just tonight was a good example. We had a developer come in prior to this hearing, talking about parking garages, talking about the fact they're starting to develop apartments more with spaces for offices. So it's real. Post-COVID, the demand is there. So, but again, I think we did our job. We can take into consideration, this is a hearing, take into consideration the people that did come, take into consideration what the general public wants to do too with this. But, you know, right now, the way I look at it, we need to move, because if we don't, we leave ourselves open, and it's fluid. It's not a closed book. At least let's move on this portion and go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Oram. Questions from the councilors? Councilor Landers.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be quick. I guess, first of all, I hate to say anything negative, because Councilor Roby, you've done a fantastic job. I can almost believe you probably spent several hundred hours on this. The presentation you did tonight, it really gave us a good history lesson. And I remember, you know, most things that you said. So I hate to say anything negative. What I guess I'd like to see, Councilor, or maybe Chairman, you know, have a urban meeting, all right, to discuss more things and maybe critique some of the comments that the 4 speakers said tonight. Looking back, and I thought of it this after, but I'm going to mention it again, you know, maybe we should have had a public input session. Because look at what we learned from these 4 speakers. If we had 40 speakers, like we did 14, how many years ago, 2014, if we had 40 speakers, okay, we maybe wouldn't have scheduled this tonight, because we would have had so much input, Mr. President and Lady Chair, that we would have had to discuss some of the input from that. We certainly, somehow, some meeting, we have to discuss what some of our former colleagues mentioned and some of our leaders in the city. That's all I'm going to say right now, Councilor Roby, and but you did a fantastic job. That presentation tonight, you know, was an A+, really. I didn't agree with, you know, some of the things you were saying, but you know, you said it, and that's the way it was. That's all, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Landers. Any other questions from the city councilors? Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Similar to Councilor Landers' comments, it's an excellent job, Katie, on this. So as far as process goes, you know, this came to the council, the changes were proposed. We worked through it, we came up with this draft, and then this draft became the public hearing, and appreciate the feedback from the public for within this process. Now, if I understand correctly, if we make any changes to this, we need to do another hearing. Is that true?
It depends on the significance of the changes, and we're
Okay.
still waiting for the planning board to hold their public hearing and get the input from the planning board.
Okay, okay. I do see this as being more of a, you know, even though there were some changes and it's scattered around, they were small changes scattered around through the whole system to address this. And I think that's fine at this level. I think a lot of this was reacting based upon what happened downtown with, you know, the issue of parking and this developer coming in. And I think we found the limits of what we sent out, because what I didn't want to see downtown is a land rush for parking spaces. So everyone ends up getting, you know, coming in as quick as they can, grab all the parking spaces, and then we don't have any parking spaces, and we're done. And whatever happened, happened. And it's almost like, you know, musical chairs. When the parking's done, you're done, you know. I think this is an important part to make sure we curtail that and some other issues that were raised. So I'm perfectly comfortable with the process as it currently is going. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Doucette. Councilor Perlman.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I also want to commend Councilor Roby. I think that it is no small task to go through all of this specific language and have all of the successive meetings and engage so many different councilors, so I really want to commend you on that. I do really appreciate the feedback from the public. I do think the public input is necessary, given that we know conditions around downtown have shifted, whether it's the impact of the pandemic, our transit problem, concerns around density and the speed of the development in our city, and I do think it would be worthwhile for us to engage the planning services. I'm in an urban planning program myself right now, and I've seen the value of that kind of expertise coming in, particularly for cities which really are, you know, downtown is the heart of a community. And so obviously we want to have development occur in the downtown, but we want it to be thoughtful and really strategic. And so I would be curious what some of the upcoming trends are, what has been happening across the region. And I do think that it would be important to engage the community in that, because as we have seen in other meetings, and I know we've all been contacted by the public at different intervals about projects, there is sometimes misinformation about what we're actually doing, what the projects mean, the limitations of the city council, and what is sort of in the actual ordinance language. So I think that for educational purposes, it's beneficial to have that expertise come together and really have everyone on the same page. I think those were good points to bring up. So I don't know, Councilor Roby, a question to you would be, we're going to have the planning board, hearing and their recommendations. Is there the opportunity to engage the public, and what does that look like at this interval?
Can I respond?
Absolutely.
My understanding is this public hearing is the public's opportunity to speak on the proposal. They had an opportunity to speak on the original proposal that was vetoed by the mayor. They had an opportunity to give input as we talked about all of this through our 3 meetings of the city council. And I guess I would just have to add, and I may get gavelled down, I spent a lot of time talking to planners through MAPC at meetings that I attended, and brought those changes, many of which were then deleted by the body who decided on what is before you today. So it wasn't just random stuff that we put into this. I think there was a real sense that we needed to make these changes.
No, I certainly appreciate that, and I can only imagine how many hours, and I know that the entire body in the city really appreciates the work that you did on that as well. I know with public hearings, as was mentioned, it can sometimes be, difficult for folks to come forward. I know sometimes we do get written comment, and that is really great, but it does seem like public input. I mean, even thinking about when we had that fire station public meeting and the folks who were able to come at a different interval, I just think the setting does shift if it's more conversational rather than sort of, a one-sided and we respond. So I think it's something that we should explore, and obviously really appreciate the work that's been done, and I think this is an important dialogue for us to have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Perlman. Any other questions from the councilors? Any other questions from the councilors?
Can I make one final comment before
We say this 3 more times.
We will wind up again at a deadline where we have to vote. So if we postpone this for public input, then we have the chance of a developer coming in with another project. So we have to decide as a council, is it time to change or not?
Thank you, Councilor Roby. Any other questions from the councilors? Any other questions from the councilors? Any other questions from the councilors? Hearing none, I close that portion of the public hearing and the entire public hearing, and this is in Urban Affairs. Agenda item number 5.
Certification from Ward 4 Councilor Tiona Brown is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 39, Section 23D, regarding the application for special permit from George Viotzis to convert an existing structure into a multifamily residential building consisting of 17 units in the Neighborhood Business District at 358 Lincoln Street, order number 23-100-8939B.
Councilor Brown.
Thank you, President Ossing. Move to accept and place on file.
Motion made and second to accept and place on file the communication. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The communication is filed 11-0. Agenda item number 6.
Communication from the mayor regarding notification of appointment of Paul Dinwoody as Director of Public Health by the Board of Health pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 111, Section 30.
Councilor Dumas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish and welcome Mr. Dinwiddie as all the success as the Director of Public Health, and I would like to accept and place on file.
Motion made and second to accept and place on file. Any discussion on the motion? Councilor Oram.
I know the department needs someone immediately, but does it ever go to personnel when we have a new person like this, or is this an automatic from the mayor's appointment?
So this, if I may, Councilor Dumas, so this is not a mayoral appointment. The Board of Health, the 3 members of the Board of Health select the Director of Public Health. So it's not a mayor's choice, it's not our choice. That's how the regulations are written. So the
Understood.
Board of Health, they've made that selection, and we're being informed of it. So we want to wish Mr. Dinwiddie all the successes, Councilor Dumas says, going forward. He's got big shoes to fill from Mr. Garside.
Oh, he definitely does, and it was definitely needed. Hopefully someday he'll come down and meet us, that's all, just so we know I won't know him until he walks. If he's in the room, that'd be nice, but I'm not going to put him on the spot. Thank you, Mr. President.
I'll be happy to extend an invite to him. Thank you, Council Oram. On the motion to accept and place on file the communication, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The communication is filed 11-0. Agenda item number 7.
Communication from City Solicitor Jason Grossfield regarding a request for executive session to discuss litigation strategy relative to JW Capital Partners LLC and Marlborough TOTG LLC versus the City of Marlborough.
Council Roby.
Thank Mr. President. Move to refer this to the, Move to move this to the end of the agenda.
Motion made and seconded to move this item to the end of the agenda. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? This item is going to the end of the agenda, 11-0. Agenda item number 8.
Communication from City Solicitor Jason Grossfield regarding the application for a special permit from Rick Marino, trustee on behalf of Marco Realty Trust, to expand a pre-existing non-conforming use pursuant to City Code, Chapter 650 zoning, 12B at 1315 Mechanic Street in the Marlborough Village District in proper legal form. Order number 23-100, 8926E.
Council Roby.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to accept and place on file the communication from the city solicitor and to move the documents to item 15 on the agenda.
Motion made and seconded to move this item down to agenda item 15 and file the communication. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It is filed and moving down to agenda item 15, 11-0. Agenda item 9.
Communication from Assistant City Solicitor Jeremy McManus regarding the application for a special permit from George Viotzis to convert an existing structure into a multifamily residential building consisting of 17 units at 358 Lincoln Street in the Neighborhood Business District in proper legal form. Order number 23-100, 8939B.
Councilor Roby.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to accept and place on file the communication from the Assistant City Solicitor and to move the document to number 16 on the agenda.
Motion made and seconded to accept and file a communication from the solicitor and move this down to agenda item number 16. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It's going down to number 16 and filing the communication 11-0. Agenda item number 10.
Communication from Assistant Building Commissioner William Payton regarding special permit deviations, 487 Lincoln Street, Cozy Cafe, order number 1617-100, 6735H.
Councilor Roby.
Thank you. I'm not sure how to read this. I order that the City Council has no objection to the deviations described in item 1 and 2 above and supports the continued compliance with item Q.
Motion made and seconded to basically agree with the city building department's recommendation that the changes that they made are acceptable from our special permit. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? So we're basically going to tell the city building inspector to go ahead and move forward with completing the process. The vote is 11-0. Agenda item number 11.
Communication from a resident regarding the opposition to the proposed amendment to City Code, Chapter 650 zoning by adding a new section to create the Sassaville Way Residential Overlay District, order number 23-100, 8941.
Councilor Roby.
Thank you, Mr. President. Add this communication in opposition to the other communications we've already accepted.
Motion made and seconded to accept and file the communication. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The communication is filed, 11-0. Agenda item number 12.
Minutes of boards, commissions, and committees.
Mr. President?
Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Motion to accept and place on file the minutes of the boards, commissions, and committees.
Motion made and seconded to accept and place on file the minutes. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The minutes are filed, 11-0. Agenda item number 13.
Claims.
Mr. President.
Councilor Perlman.
Move to refer the claims to the legal department.
Motion made and seconded to refer the claims to the legal department. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The claims are going to legal, 11-0. Reports of committees. For time purposes, I'm going to ask Councilor Perlman to go first so we can get Mr. DePercio out of here.
Been a long meeting, yes. So representing legislative and legal affairs, we did receive a communication from the city engineer, so I will be requesting a suspension so we can bring this onto the agenda and enter the communication.
Motion made and seconded to suspend the rules for the communication from the city engineer. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The communication is accepted, 11-0. Councilor Perlman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask the city clerk if he could read part of the letter just so everyone's on the same page, and then I would move to accept the easement and approve it.
Motion made and seconded to have the city clerk read the letter from the city engineer, then approve the order for the easement. All those in favor? Opposed? Mr. Clerk, could you please read the letter?
Honorable President Ossian and Councilors, enclosed for your acceptance is an order for the permanent sidewalk easement and temporary construction easement offered to the city from the property owner at 249-257 Cedar Hill Street, IPG Photonics. Cedar Hill Street is currently undergoing a reconstruction project. The project is being funded by a MassWorks grant and includes the addition of a sidewalk. In order to save several large oak trees along the side of Cedar Hill Street in front of 249 and 257, we requested that IPG allow for that section of the sidewalk to be constructed on their property. IPG agreed to grant the city an easement over their properties for the sidewalk. City Solicitor Jason Grossvale has worked out the details of the easement with IPG and their legal representatives. Attached to the final documents, including a plan showing in the easement. Because of the construction project is ongoing and the sidewalk construction work needs to take place as soon as possible, I am respectfully requesting that this item be added to the City Council's agenda for September 18th for your consideration and acceptance. Please contact me with any questions. I'm available at City Council meetings as well as to discuss any issues you may have. Sincerely, Thomas DePercio, Jr., City Engineer.
Are there any questions for Mr. DePercio? If not, on the motion's been made and seconded to approve the order for the easement for the sidewalk on Cedar Hill Road. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The order is approved for the easement, 11-0. Thank you, Tom. Councilor Irish.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance Committee met on September 14, 2023. Meeting convened at 6:30 p.m. We had two items on the agenda that evening. Order number 23-100-8934. Communication from Mayor Vigent together with FY24 capital bond request in the amount of $4,925,000 for emergency communication systems and public safety equipment. Second item on the agenda that evening was order number 23-100-8961. Communication from Mayor Vigent together with a transfer request in the amount of $4,925,000 from undesignated fund, free cash, to public safety equipment for public safety communication upgrades. Chair Irish read two communications from Mayor Vigent, one addressing the bond and the second addressing the free cash transfer as the mayor's preferred method for funding the upgrades. Fire Chief Breen turned the presentation over to Assistant Chief Fire Chief Emmanuel Sin to describe the new system, which he explained in detail, including the fact that certain aspects have been out of date since 2018, while others have been out of date for 8 years. Police Chief George explained an issue that occurred on Labor Day when all communications had to occur on one channel as the second channel was unavailable. President Ossing opposed funding the public safety communication systems entirely with free cash and favored bonding the project, stating it would not be fiscally responsible to spend down the free cash for this city council and the next administration, stating there is a difference of 2 weeks' time between the bonding and the use of free cash. The representative from Motorola stated he would approach Motorola to request the extension of time until October 6, 2023 for the discount. Chief Breen and Assistant Chief Manuelson will inform the City Council of any extension dates with Motorola. On order number 23-100-8934, on a motion by Councilor Orem, seconded by the Chair, the committee recommends approval of the bond of $4,925,000 for public safety communication upgrades. The vote carried 4-1, one opposed. On order number 23-100-8961, on a motion made by Councilor Orem, seconded by the Chair, it was approved 5-0. The free cash transfer was filed. The meeting adjourned at 7:20 p.m. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Irish. Are there any other reports of committees? Any other reports of committees? Hearing none, agenda item 14.
Order number 23-100-8940, petition from Mass Electric and Verizon New England to install two new jointly owned poles, 2225 and 2226, on Forest Street, approximately 1,500 feet east of the center line of the intersection of Forest Street and Sandini Road, to serve a new building at 201 Forest Street. Recommendation of the Public Services Committee is to approve with conditions.
Councilor Lander.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve the petition. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It is approved, 11-0. Agenda item 15.
Order number 23-100, 8926E, application for a special permit from Rick Marino, trustee on behalf of Marlborough Realty Trust, to expand a pre-existing non-conforming use pursuant to City Code Chapter 650, Section 12B in the Marlborough Village District at 1315 Mechanic Street. Recommendation of the Urban Affairs Committee is to approve as amended.
Councilor Roby.
Mike.
Move the recommendation of committee, which is to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve the recommendation of the committee, which is to approve the special permit. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will ask the clerk to please read the conditions.
City Council, pursuant to its authority under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 48, and the zoning ordinance of the City of Marlborough, hereby grants the applicant a special permit to change the pre-existing non-conforming glass repair use of the site to an automobile repair use to complement and serve as part of the expansion of the current automobile repair use on the adjacent property located at 19 Mechanic Street, Marlborough, Mass., including making certain non-structural modifications to the existing garage at the site, improving the front facade, installing 2 garage doors along the side of the garage, new bathroom equipment, storage platform, and 3 automotive lifts, all within the current structural envelope as shown on the plans, subject to the following conditions, which conditions shall be binding on the applicant and successors and/or signs. 1, construction in accordance with applicable laws. Construction at the site is to be in accordance with all applicable building codes and zoning regulations in effect in the City of Marlborough and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. 2, site plan review. The issuance of the special permit is further subject to detailed site plan review by the Site Plan Review Committee in accordance with the City of Marlborough Site Plan Review Ordinance prior to the issuance of the building permit. Any additional changes, alterations, modifications, or amendments as required during the process of site plan review shall be further conditions attached to the building permit, and no occupancy permit shall be issued until the applicant has complied with all conditions. Subsequent site plan review shall be consistent with the conditions of this special permit and the plan submitted, reviewed and approved by the City Council as a special permit granting authority. Site plan review shall consider, among other things, drainage, curbing, parking, construction of the retaining wall and guardrail along with signage and plantings. 3, landscaping. As part of the site plan review, additional plantings may be required beyond the specific that specified in the zoning ordinance in order to improve the site appearance on this prominent and visible section of Main Street. 4, incorporation of submissions. All plans, photo renderings, site evaluations, briefs, and other documentation provided by the applicant as part of the application and as amended or revised during the application hearing process for the City Council and or the City Council's Urban Affairs Committee are herein incorporated into and become part of this special permit and become conditions and requirements of the same unless otherwise altered by the City Council. 5, access. The applicant shall maintain and provide access to 7 to 9 Mechanic Street right-of-way in accordance with any applicable instrument or plan of record. 6, operations. All auto repair activities shall take place indoors. All loading and unloading shall take place within the site and not on Mechanic Street, and no deliveries of materials or equipment or shipments from the site shall be permitted on Sunday. The operating hours shall be limited to Monday through Saturday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. There shall be no operation of the use on Sunday. The sale of vehicles is prohibited on the site. Outdoor storage is prohibited on the site. 7, lighting. Exterior lighting at the site shall be downward facing and shielded to minimize impacts on neighboring properties. Exterior lighting at the site shall be shut off outside of operating hours except for lighting necessary for security and emergency access. Signs. Signage at the site shall comply with the city sign ordinance, with any freestanding sign at the site's driveway entrance being substantially the same as the sign shown in the photo attached hereto as attachment B. Noise and air quality. The applicant shall comply with the city's noise ordinance and shall comply with all state, federal requirements governing air quality and emissions. Recording of decision. In accordance with the provisions of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 48, Section 11, the applicant and successors and/or signs at its expense shall record this special permit in the Middlesex South Registry of Deeds after the city clerk has certified that the 20-day period for appealing this special permit has elapsed with no appeal having been filed, and before the applicant has applied to the building commissioner for a building permit. Upon recording, the applicant shall forthwith provide a copy of the recorded special permit to the City Council Office, the Building Department, and the City Solicitor's Office.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. You've heard the conditions. Are there any final comments on the motion to approve the special permit? Councilor Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to go on record that, again, I continue to not support this project. I think it's an idea to, I think it's a mistake. Thank you. I think it's a mistake to approve this. Driving by here again tonight, the lot's full of cars. We're adding 3 bays. This business is going to increase substantially. The glass repair place was not an automotive place. This is substantially different. It's the head of Main Street. I think this, in light of the discussion tonight, it just speaks to the question, what do we want for Main Street? We said no automotive in the ordinances, and here we are approving this expanded automotive business right at the beginning of Main Street. This question was about zoning. It's a marvelous business owner, people love them, I get that, but I still don't understand what we're doing. I think this decision's a mistake, and I will not be supporting it tonight.
Thank you, Councilor Wagner. Any discussion from the councilors? Hearing none. So on the motion to approve the special permit, a affirmative vote is to approve, a negative vote is to deny. I will ask the clerk to please read the roll.
Councilor Doucette?
Yes.
Councilor David?
Yes.
Councilor Dumas?
Yes.
Councilor Roby?
Yes.
Councilor Landers?
Yes.
Councilor Orem?
Yes.
Councilor Wagner?
No.
Councilor Irish?
Yes.
Councilor Pearlman?
Yes.
Councilor Brown?
Yes.
And Councilor Ossing?
Yes.
10 yeas, sir, 1 nay.
The motion to approve the special permit for 1315 Mechanic Street is approved, 10 in favor, 1 opposed. Agenda item 16.
Order number 23-100, 8939B, application for a special permit from George Vyatzis to convert an existing structure into a multifamily residential building consisting of 17 units in the neighborhood business district at 358 Lincoln Street. The recommendation of the Urban Affairs Committee is to approve as amended.
Councilor Dumas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry, Councilor Roby. Due to a conflict of interest, I will need to recuse myself from this vote.
Councilor Roby.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move the recommendation of committee, which is to approve.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the recommendation of the committee. I will ask the clerk to please read the conditions for the special permit.
Sorry. The City Council, pursuant to its authority under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 48, and the zoning ordinance of the City of Marlborough, hereby grants the applicant a special permit for a multifamily dwelling at the site as shown on the plans filed, subject to the following conditions, which conditions shall be binding on the applicant, its successors, and/or assigns. 1, construction in accordance with applicable laws. Construction of all structures on the site is to be in accordance with all applicable building codes and zoning regulations in effect in the City of Marlborough and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and shall be built according to the plans as may be amended during site plan review. 2, site plan review. The issuance of the special permit is further subject to detailed site plan review by the Site Plan Review Committee in accordance with the City of Marlborough Site Plan Review Ordinance prior to the issuance of the building permit. Any additional changes, alterations, modifications, or amendments as required during the process of site plan review shall be further conditions attached to the building permit, and a final certificate of occupancy shall not be issued until the applicant has complied with all the conditions, provided that the Site Plan Committee, may authorize the phasing of the site and building work depending upon weather conditions and other factors. Subsequent site plan review shall be consistent with the conditions of the special permit, and the plans submitted, reviewed, and approved by the City Council as a special permit granting authority. 3, modification of plans. Notwithstanding conditions 1 and 2 above, the Site Plan Review Committee may approve minor amendments to the plans so long as said changes do not materially increase the impervious area of the use, alter traffic flow, or materially increase the size of the building, or increase the number of residential units at all as shown on the plans. 4, incorporation of submissions. All plans, photo renderings, site evaluations, briefs, and other documentation provided by the applicant as part of the application and/or as amended or revised during the application hearing process before the City Council and/or the City Council's Urban Affairs Committee are herein incorporated into and become part of the special permit and become conditions and requirements of the same unless otherwise altered by the City Council. 5, stormwater and erosion control management. The applicant shall ensure that its site superintendent during construction of this project is competent in stormwater and erosion control management. This individual's credentials shall be acceptable to the engineering division of the city's Department of Public Works and the city's Conservation Commission. This individual shall be responsible for checking the site before, during, and after storm events, including weekends and evenings when storms are predicted. This individual shall ensure that no untreated stormwater leaves the site consistent with the state's and city's stormwater regulations. This individual shall ensure compliance with all approved sequence of construction plan and the approved erosion control plan. The applicant shall grant this individual complete authority of the site as it relates to stormwater and erosion controls. 6, landscaping and screening. As part of the Site Plan Review, the Site Plan Review Committee shall review the site's landscaping and screening and shall be authorized to require additional fencing or landscaping as needed to provide appropriate buffers and screening for the adjacent properties and future residents of the site. 7, landscaping easement over 31 Gay Street. Prior to the issuance of the building permit for the use, the applicant shall obtain and have recorded with the Middlesex South District Registry of Deeds a permanent landscape easement over the portion of the abutting property located at 31 Gay Street as shown in the plans. The landscaping shown on the approved site plan with the easement area shall be maintained in perpetuity as part of the 358 and 364 Lincoln Street property maintenance. 8, lighting. Exterior lighting at the site shall be downward facing and shielded to minimize impacts on the neighboring properties, and with a lighting plan for the site to be reviewed and further conditioned during the site plan review process. 9, electric utilities. The use shall have all electric utilities, including heat, air conditioning, and hot water. 10, compliance with applicable laws. The applicant shall comply with all municipal, state, and federal rules, regulations, and ordinances as they may apply to the construction, maintenance, and operation of the use. 11, recording of decision. In accordance with the provisions of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 48, Section 11, the applicant at its expense shall record this special permit in the Middlesex South Registry of Deeds after the city clerk has certified that the 20-day period for appealing the special permit has lapsed and no appeal having been filed, and before the applicant has applied to the building commissioner for a building permit. Upon recording, the applicant shall forthwith provide a copy of the recorded special permit to the city council office, the building department, and the city solicitor's office.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Councilors, you've heard the conditions for the special permit. Are there any discussions on the special permit? Seeing none, the motion's been made and seconded. I will ask the clerk to please read the roll. Again, a yea vote's in favor of the special permit, and a no vote is to deny.
Councilor Dumas is abstaining. Councilor Brown?
Yes.
Councilor Doucette?
Yes.
Councilor Landers? Councilor Landers?
Yes, yes.
Sorry. Councilor Irish?
Yes.
Councilor Pearlman?
Yes.
Councilor Roby? Yes. Councilor Oram?
Yes.
Councilor Wagner?
Yes.
Councilor Navin?
Yes.
Councilor Ossing?
Yes.
10 yea, 1 abstention, sir.
The special permit for the Armory is approved, 10 in favor with 1 abstention. Congratulations, George. Good luck. We've moved our item number 7 to the end of the agenda. I will ask the clerk to please read the order.
Move that the Marlborough City Council meet in executive session under Purpose 3 of the Open Meeting Law, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body regarding the pending matter, JW Capital Partners LLC and Marlborough TOTG LLC versus the Marlborough City Council. As the chair hereby declares that discussion in an open session may have a detrimental effect on the city and the city council's litigating position, the city council will not reconvene in open session after the executive session.
Councilor Roby.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to go into executive session, and as the clerk stated, we will not return to public session at the end.
Motion's been made and seconded to go into executive session, and again, we will not be reconvening. I will ask the clerk to call the roll to go into executive session.
Councilor Navin?
Yes.
Councilor Irish?
Yes.
Councilor Pearlman?
Yes.
Councilor Doucette?
Yes.
Councilor Roby?
Yes.
Councilor Wagner?
Yes.
Councilor Oram?
Yes.
Councilor Landers?
Yes.
Councilor Ossing?
Yes.
Councilor Brown?
Yes.
Councilor Dumas is abstaining. 10 yea, 1 abstention, sir.
The motion to go into executive session is approved, 10 in favor, 1 abstention. We will not be reconvening, so we will gavel this meeting closed. If anyone needs a quick bio break, now's the time to take it, but I ask you to be quick. We'll recess for 2 minutes.